Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel, and I thank all of you for being here wherever you may be, and of course, however you may be listening. Very, very big, huge, massive news just breaking today. I don't know exactly when it dropped. Of course, your boy goes to church on Sunday, so I can't really check uh, the internet and some of the Iowa Hawkeye sports websites, like right there in the moment, and see all the latest information that's dropping. My guess is it happens sometime before nooner. That would be my guess. But of course, the news that I am that because it's neither here nor there, the news that I am referring to is the Iowa Hawkeyes finally selecting their new offensive coordinator to replace Brian Ferentz and hopefully turn this Iowa Hawkeye offense around. And a couple of things before I reveal who the individual is. A lot of you guys probably already know by the time you're watching this. I said, so I did a video when there was a lot of news trickling down surrounding the Iowa Hawkeye offensive coordinator search that on Joe Philbin. Joe Philbin, there was a lot of fire around his name. I did say that it was possible that it was not going to be him. And I did not say that I thought for sure 100% it was going to be him. I merely evaluated him as a candidate because his name was one of the top names to be thrown around, along with former Wisconsin quarterback Paul Chryst, or quarterback, offensive, no, former Wisconsin head coach Paul Chryst. And in that video, I detailed, and in previous videos, what to expect as an Iowa Hawkeye fan with this offensive coordinator search. And I said early on that the bottom line was it was going to be tough sledding in certain regards to find an individual with the mental makeup and thought process to come around towards, sorry, Mike, towards accepting the offense coordinator position at Iowa, simply because Kirk Ferentz is who Kirk Ferentz is. And it's not that there hasn't been evidence in the past that Kirk Ferentz has relinquished some control to the offensive coordinator, as opposed to him fully dictating every aspect of the offensive game plan, because he has. Kirk Ferentz has shown a willingness to change. If you guys recall, for about a few years after that shellacking Iowa took to Tennessee, it's very funny. Life has a way of having a cyclical nature. It was Tennessee last time that sparked the whole, Kirk needs to change. And then, we from the Iowa media, this is Kirk 2.0, evidence of Kirk 2.1, evidence of Kirk 2.2. I know you guys all remember that. Cyclature, circulative, whatever the case may be. And this time around, it wasn't per se that the Tennessee loss in and of itself this year sparked the murmurs of change, because that happened well before. But it's just ironic that it was Tennessee yet again that handed Iowa the shellacking and nailed the coffin shut on the fact that Iowa football, if they want to reach the heights that they're capable of, especially with the defensive and special teams coaches that they have in place and the talent they have on those sides of the football, they would need to overhaul their offensive system. Now, of course, there's also there's also a wide receiver opening, which we'll get to. That's definitely a question that a lot of you guys are asking about. Um, and so it was going to be hard for Iowa to get and curtail some of these top tier names on the coaching carousel to consider the Iowa Hawkeyes. I don't know if Philbin said no to Iowa. I don't know if for sure Chris said no. Paul Chryst, the rumors are that for sure Paul Chryst said no to the Iowa Hawkeyes. And to tell you the truth, I'm happy. I did not want him to be Iowa's offensive coordinator. Had that happened, I thought that Iowa was essentially replacing Brian Ferentz with Brian Ferentz had they gotten Paul Chryst. The reason why Paul Chryst was fired as Wisconsin head coach was because his offense was outdated and the program needed an overhaul to stay competitive. He had done good things, but it was time to move forward because he had shown that he was not willing to do so. All right. So unless he was able to show the Iowa coaching staff that he had changed, that he had evolved, it was essentially going back to Brian Ferentz. So we don't know, guys, for sure if they said no or if it was Iowa who interviewed them and kind of put them on ice and interviewed other candidates. You have to take everything in the media with a grain of salt and these sources, because those same sources said that Joe Philbin was for sure going to be the next Iowa Hawkeye head coach or offensive coordinator. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but just take it with a grain of salt. Okay. The media has proven to be false, not just in sports, but in a variety of different ways. Okay. You cannot fall head over heels for everything the media says. The other thing that I said was that ultimately, if you're Iowa, the two top selling points that you could have, well, three. There's three selling points you could have as in the to relay to these candidates considering the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Iowa Hawkeyes considering them. Number one is if you are able to come in here and totally revamp this offense and take this and not just that, but this team as a whole, this program is able to reach new heights directly after you are hired as offensive coordinator, and there's a measurable uptick in offensive statistical performance. That will be a hell of a thing that you can put on your resume, a hell of a detail that you can put on your resume. That leads me to number two. Kirk Ferentz is in the back end of his career. Now, to tell you the truth, guys, Kirk Ferentz is a very healthy guy. He is in shape for his age. He looks great for his age. Honestly, guys, you could make the case that he could coach for 10 more years from today. Honestly, I don't think that's likely, but I do think it's at least slightly possible. Because again, guys, he really does take care of himself. And some of these coaches that we've seen in history, I wouldn't say that that's the case as much now. The new fad amongst coaches is to quit while you're ahead, aka Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, there's other coaches that I know have done that. I can't remember the other coaches, but that is the current fad, is to quit while you're ahead. But a few years before that, we saw coaches willing to stay until like a few years until their death. Okay. So to say that it's not possible would just be false. And off the top of my head, I don't know for sure how old Kirk Ferentz is. Let me see if I can get it pulled up on my iPad here. But I'm just saying that he could stay that long, but it's unlikely. All right. So number two is if you can come in, and this is on the back of number one, and the program has a ton of success and is able to take it to the next level directly after you are hired as OC, and there is that uptick, you would, in theory, be one of the hottest candidates to replace Kirk Ferentz as the head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes. You're already in the program. You've already proven that you can be successful. You know the Iowa way, and there would be a ton of support and buy-in from the Iowa fan base because you would be the darling that revamped this Iowa offense that was so abysmal for so long. And you are already there. So there's familiarity. And yes, you would be the darling that saved the Iowa Hawkeye offense and took their offense from mediocrity to wherever you were able to take it. So Kirk Ferentz is 68 years old. Could I see him coaching till he's 78? Yes, honestly, I could. Do I think it's possible? No. Either way, 10 years or not, I think Kirk Ferentz probably has about 5 years left. You would be on the short list to replace Kirk Ferentz as head coach at the University of Iowa. Okay. The third selling point with regards to the sales pitch for the offensive coordinator is very simple. It's University of Iowa. It's already a solid program. You already have talent there. And I would say the first two were probably the biggest sales pitches, but the third is definitely piggybacking on those two things. But, it's not all bad. There's talent. It's University of Iowa. It's a good football program. It's good coaching staff. And on the backs of the first two positives is if you are the guy that can revamp this Iowa Hawkeye offense, it will be a huge feather in your cap as a whole and really help you for potential jobs if it's not Iowa's head coaching job once Kirk Ferentz is done. And I think it says a lot as a man and as a football coach if you are the guy who says, you know what, I know what they say about Kirk Ferentz. I know what they say about the Iowa Hawkeye football program, but I'm going to be the one. With all of that being said, I'm still going to be the one that helps revamp this Iowa Hawkeye offense. So, all right, guys, I said all of that. With that being said, by the way, guys, like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. Let's get this channel to 2,000 subscribers by the time the next football season rolls around. Without further ado, let's dive into this. Without introduction needed, the next offensive coordinator is one Tim Lester. Now, to tell you guys the truth, I was trying to make that way better in my head and articulate that way better in my head, but it's Tim Lester, guys. That's who it is. I don't know a ton about Tim Lester. From what I have briefly read, I like it. I like that he's younger than Joe Philbin and Paul Chryst. Oh, that's the other thing that I wanted to say is, and I said this in previous videos as well, Iowa was never going to be able to get any of the top guys on the coaching carousel with high profile names. Okay. The best that they could hope for was a Paul Chryst, and even his name does not currently have a ton of prestige and fire around it. Is he considered a good coach? Yes. But is he a sexy hire? Of course not. So Iowa was always going to want to make a hire based off of, one, will he be willing to stay with Iowa for a minimum of a recruiting cycle, 4 to 5 years, and develop and because it's important to Iowa that they have coaches that are willing to be there for the long run rather than just a pit stop on their way to something better. So that was number one. And number two is they were always going to have to go after a guy from the MAC or, because that's the conference in the Midwest that they have the most familiarity with, that the Iowa coaching staff has the most familiarity with. That's who they see on the recruiting trails. That's who they are recruiting against. So it was always likely going to be, a guy who has coached in the Midwest, and Iowa has their tentacles close to. Okay. So I'm not surprised by this hire at all. Western Michigan is absolutely one of those pit stops on their way to a Big Ten school 9 times out of 10. If you do well, and yes, Western Michigan is one of those common schools that it is on their way to Minnesota or Iowa or one of the Big Ten schools. So I am not surprised by this hire at all. Okay. I knew that it was likely going to be this. Iowa was also, there was a photo released by Scott Docterman, I believe, of Kirk Ferentz eating or having lunch or dinner with former offensive coordinator of Duke. I'm blanking on his name right now. Let me see if I can find that real quick. So here it is. I typed in former Duke OC. While former Duke offensive coordinator Kevin Johns seemed to have all the momentum late last week and through the weekend, Ferentz opted for the guy who most recently was a senior analyst with the Green Bay Packers following 6 seasons as the Western Michigan head coach. And honestly, guys, listen, does Kevin Johns, was there a certain appeal to Kevin Johns and the Duke system that we have seen have success in the last 10 years under, I blank on who their head coach was, who coached Peyton Manning. Yes, there was a certain appeal to that. Everybody knows that a huge part of Duke's success of late, it hasn't been crazy success, but for Duke, it's pretty dang good success. Was there a certain appeal to him? Absolutely. All right. But I think that this ultimately is the better hire. He's younger than Kevin Johns. And he does, in my opinion, have a pretty good resume on his resume. He has a pretty good resume on his resume. He has a good resume to his name. So let's read this. The long-awaited saga has finally come to a conclusion. On Sunday, sources indicated to Hawkeye Insider that former Western Michigan head coach Tim Lester will be Brian Ferentz's successor and take over as offensive coordinator. Lester and Ferentz had been communicating for the past week, and there was a strong belief in the foundation that they could achieve with their partnership. Despite being the head coach at Western Michigan, Lester was the primary play caller. The belief is that Lester has a modern understanding of the way football is being played, but respects the way that Kirk Ferentz wants to run his football team. And yes, I would agree with that was the best hire was always going to be a coach that has a modern understanding. I couldn't have said it better myself. A modern understanding of offensive schemes and offensive football with a respect for the program nature of a Kirk Ferentz. And what attributes accompany a program like that has made a program like Iowa so successful. Okay, because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's the thing. Ultimately, none of us are asking for Iowa to be a Big 12 type offense or an offense that's scoring 40 plus points a game, but it's at the detriment of the defense, and you're having 100 plus possessions a game, and you're having a bunch of turnovers. That's not what we're asking. We're just asking for an average to slightly above average offensive production, but still with the identity of your football team being the eliteness of your defense and special teams. Lester also sees the big picture, which is something that Ferentz values. The former Bronco head coach has experience as an offense coordinator and as a head coach. Prior to taking the head coaching position at Western Michigan, Lester was the quarterback's coach at Purdue in 2016, mentoring sophomore signal caller David Blau to 25 tubs and 3,052 yards averaging more than 279 yards passing per game. This is a tweet here, or an X, as it were. Yeah, it is kind of funny how X, formerly known as Twitter, is rebranding, and can you even call it a tweet anymore? Western Michigan's NCAA ranks in total offense and scoring offense with Tim Lester as head coach. 2018, 39th and 35th. 2019, 25th and 30th. 2020, 16th and 9th. 2021, 12th and 34th. Wow, guys, that's impressive. That's really good. That's really good. That is good. I am impressed by that. Now, you have to take it with a grain of salt, though, because when you're at a program like Western Michigan, you do, in order to make up for the talent gap between you and Power 5 teams, you do have to have a almost not always, but you do have to be willing to take chances and have more of a optimistic approach to the offensive play calling and offensive system and aggressive approach. Lester spent this past season with the Green Bay Packers as a senior analyst. Former Duke offensive coordinator Kevin Johns was also strongly considered for the position. Stay locked in. All right, let's see if we can find anything else here. Let's see what this is. We already read that. While former Duke OC Kevin Johns seemed to have all the momentum, so we already watched that. Don't listen to theirs, listen to mine. Let's see. All right, let's see how old Tim Lester is. I'm not saying age is the end all be all, guys, because in the end, football is a meritocracy, and what matters the most, and is really the only thing that matters, is the on the field production. But there is something to be said about, especially in this day and age, about having a younger minded coach. I'm not saying all of your coaches should be younger minded or younger, but it does help regarding the attractiveness of your program. It does give you a different insight into the landscape of college football. And I think Iowa right now has the best coaching staff it has had in a long time. And I think that the current makeup of the Iowa Hawkeye coaching staff has multiple people who would and could be considered as the replacement for Kirk Ferentz in the future. He's 46 years old, and he's from Wheaton, Illinois. And that's also a good thing. Iowa, their second best recruiting state is the state of Illinois. And the fact that this guy likely has strong ties in the state of Illinois is a big deal. Illinois, by far, is Iowa's second best recruiting state, if not their first. Let me show you guys something here. I'm going to pull up their commitments and show you just how many players are from the state of Illinois in the last 3 classes. Okay. So you can just see it here, breakdown. So the 2024 Iowa recruiting class had 4 guys from the state of Illinois and 7 from Iowa. All right. So look at this. Will Nolan, 4-star offensive tackle. Brody McCaslin, high 3-star, 89, offensive tackle from Illinois. Josh Janowski, high 3-star offensive guard, and high 3-star wide receiver KJ Parker from Immaculate Conception. Let's look at 2023. So it is good that he has those ties because Illinois is a huge recruiting state for the Iowa Hawkeyes. 2023, there were 4 prospects from the state of Illinois, 6 from Iowa. They had oh, come on, what is going on? They had Khalil Tate, John Nestor. Two of their top recruits were from the state of Illinois. Um, they were DBs. Iowa is still recruiting pretty well in Florida too, and Texas. The thing with Florida and Texas, if you're the Iowa Hawkeyes, is you want to be able to land, one to anywhere from 1 to 3 guys to round out your recruiting cycle each class. It's never going to be the state that you get the most commits from, but if you can find 1 or 2 really, really nice gems that you're able to sell your program on, it will help round out your class nicely. Kanan Leonard from Illinois, Tegan Davis. So, we'll look at one more recruiting class. Well, this is good, guys. I'm glad. I knew that that this was likely going to be the case, that we were going to find out who the offense coordinator was going to be in the next couple of days. This past week, I thought for sure it was going to be done by the end of this week, and that was the case. They literally waited until the last moment. My guess is they did have a deadline, and they really wanted to make sure that they had it in place today by the end of this week. That's what all the rumblings were. Now, again, you got to take it with a grain of salt, all the rumblings, especially the rumblings. But a lot there was a lot of reason to have confidence behind that. They had 2 recruits. So this one wasn't the most, this recruiting cycle. This was the Coof year. Iowa 4, Michigan 3, Wisconsin 3, Illinois 2. But they got let's see, Jacob Bostic. Yeah, I remember this recruiting cycle. It was a because of Coof, it was a really tough year, and a lot of kids just ended up staying close to home. And they got, where's he at? Where that second guy at? Huh. I don't see him. Maybe they're counting Steven Stilianos as the guy. I'm not seeing. Oh, Brian Allen, but he was from Illinois, but he transferred to Connecticut. So, all right, guys, let's go back to looking at Tim Lester. Let's see what Chad. Let's see what good old Chad has to say about this. Iowa is hiring Tim Lester as its next offense coordinator. What? Wow. With direct knowledge of the hiring process. ESPN and 24 Sports were among the first to report the news. A nearly 3-month search has ended to replace Kirk Ferentz' son, Brian, as offense coordinator. Lester compiled a 32-27 mark in 6 seasons as a head coach, which is pretty good. That's what I like the most about this hire is I think Tim Lester immediately gives Iowa a potential candidate to replace Kirk Ferentz when the time comes. And he had that's about as good of a head coaching record as one can get out of Western Michigan. Okay, he was obviously a good head coach or a decent head coach. From 2017 to 22 before being fired after a 5-7 season. Wow. He was an analyst for the Green Bay Packers last season. Lester's only Power 5 play calling experience was at Syracuse, where he took over as OC midway through the 2014 season and was OC in 2015. Syracuse went 5-14 with Lester as the play caller. Iowa's offense ranked last in FBS in 2023 at 234.6 yards per game. The thing is, guys, all the candidates that Iowa was going to be able to get outside of them, what do I always tell you guys? Unless you are going to put forth what I call and Clay Travis calls the dump truck method, which is what the SEC utilizes. unless you're going to do that and just dump a ton of cash on any offense coordinator, and you are completely willing to put your money where your mouth is and get whatever offense coordinator is the best offense coordinator out there, or top, one of the top candidates out there. Unless you're willing to do that, there's going to be negatives to each of these possible candidates. Okay, Lester by no means is perfect, but so far there are a lot of things that I'm seeing that I like about him. Lester won the job, and Ferentz's final verdict over fellow finalist Kevin Johns, the former Duke offense coordinator. Ferentz's top choice, former Wisconsin coach Paul Chryst, turned down the job in mid-January. Huh. So I guess that is true. All right, guys. All right. We'll read this, and then I want to show you guys his Wikipedia page so we can do a real deep look. Let's see. Man, all these sites have all of these ads. I can confirm Tim Lester will be the next OC for Iowa football. Let's see. Lester's record at Western Michigan was 37-32, and his overall career record is 67-55. While at Western Michigan, Lester's offense averaged 32.02 points per game with a low of 19 points per game in 2022 and a high of 41.67 points per game. Man, if we could just get somewhere in the middle of that, that would be perfect. This past season, Lester spent 2023 as an analyst. Tim Lester was slated to take on the offense coordinator job at Troy, but will now be joining the Iowa Hawkeyes. Lester comes as the new offense coordinator after it appeared to be between him and former Duke Blue Devils offense coordinator Kevin Johns. All right, let's look at his Wikipedia here. So, I mean, the good news is that the current class is already signed, the 2024 class. And the 2025 class is right at the beginning of its recruiting cycle. And Iowa already has 3 commits. So I think, and they already have their quarterback commit. Now, hopefully, this guy is okay with the current quarterback commit. You never know. But so, yeah, he's definitely from Illinois. Lester had been considered a blue chip prospect and planned on committing to Florida and head coach Steve Spurrier. Lester threw for 11,200. Okay, that's good. At least he was a quarterback, guys. Brian Ferentz wasn't even a quarterback. At least he's a quarterback, okay? We need somebody who is actually a quarterback and played quarterback at a high level. That's what we needed, all right? I'm not saying that always needs to be the case, but guys, you have to admit, the people with the best offensive understanding of the offense is 9 times out of 10 the quarterback. All right. Maybe the running back. Lester threw for 11,299 passing yards with 87 tubs during his career, setting 17 school records after being recruited to Western Michigan and winning MAC Freshman of the Year under whichever coach. Lester finished his career ranked 4th all time in NCAA Division I for passing yards and 6 touchdowns. And I'm sure he has good connections in the state of Michigan as well. So he had a knee injury, which is why he looks like he got in trouble on that. So he's in the Western Michigan Hall of Fame. So this is his coaching career on the right side. You guys can check it out yourselves too. So quarterbacks coach, Syracuse. Offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, Syracuse. Purdue quarterbacks coach, Western Michigan head coach. So he's still very young in his coaching career. He was 6-6, 7-6, 7-6, 4-2, 8-5, and 5-7 at Western Michigan. He was never able to win their conference, but he finished fourth, tied for second, tied for second, tied for fourth, and third. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. My final analysis, based off of what I can see, is honestly, I think that this is about as good of a hire as the Iowa coaches could have, coaching staff, or the Iowa Hawkeyes could have hoped for. Let's keep it real. Despite the positives or selling points that I pointed out that Iowa could relay to offense coordinator candidates, there was a stink coming off of and stemming from this Iowa Hawkeye football program, namely Kirk Ferentz and his attachment to how the offensive scheme is ran and what scheme is ran and the game plan. A lot of people just guys, I guarantee a lot of people, a lot of the candidates viewed Iowa as a career killer. And that's a tough stench to get away from the program. And it immediately dwindles your coaching pool or recruiting pool. One more thing to put it into perspective, Mike, is I can't help him. I'm a hand talker. Is simply, if it is true that Paul Chryst did in fact decline the offensive coordinator position for the Iowa Hawkeyes, what does that tell you about where Iowa stood with coaching candidates at large? Okay, it says a lot. Now, we don't know for sure if it's true. I would say it's likely it's true, but we don't know for sure. But hypothetically, theoretically, if it's true, hypothetically and theoretically are not the same thing, but let's just say it is for the sake of argument, that totally gives you a viewpoint of where Iowa stood in the minds of football coaches at large. Given that, I think that this is about as good of a coaching get as Iowa could hope for. He's young, 46 years old. His offensives at the Division I level have had obvious success. Have they had some issues? Yes. One of the seasons that we saw, they averaged less than 20 points a game. All right. But one of his offense scored 40 plus points a game. We saw the stats for his time at, let's see, was it Western Michigan? Yeah, it was at Western Michigan, where his offense ranked in scoring offense and in total offense in 4 of his coaching years. And they were always in the top 50 in both of those categories. He's from Illinois. Illinois is a very important state for the Iowa Hawkeyes when it comes to recruiting. It's a very prime area for the Iowa Hawkeyes to recruit. That is their pipeline. That is by far the second most important state that the Iowa Hawkeyes recruit. He's a quarterback. He's a former quarterback. Not just is he a former quarterback, but he was a successful quarterback at the Division I level. Going along the lines of him being young, I'm sure he's going to be able to relate to recruits a lot better. I'm sure he's going to bring a certain viewpoint that maybe you wouldn't have gotten with the Joe Philbin, or you'd be hard pressed to get even with a Paul Chryst. All right. So I'm sure he's going to help in recruiting. He's going to add interesting viewpoints to the Iowa Hawkeye football program. He immediately gives Iowa a potential candidate to replace Kirk Ferentz. Now, again, all of that is, on the shoulders of him being successful, because if he comes in and he's basically the same statistical offense that we saw under Brian Ferentz, there's no way in hell he's going to get the job. So he checks a lot of boxes, guys. He's been a head coach at the Division I level. He's been an offense coordinator. He's young. He's from the state of Illinois. I'm sure he has recruiting ties to Michigan as he played in Western Michigan. From what it says, he respects the coaching mentality that Kirk Ferentz has. So there's a lot to like there. There is. I think that this is when I was thinking, and you guys that watch my channel consistently know that I said this. The best coaching candidate that we could have gotten is a guy that is maybe a little bit under the radar. He's young, but he has had obvious success in an offense coordinator role and even potentially as a head coach. It was never going to be a situation where Steve Sarkisian goes to Alabama or Lane Kiffin goes to Alabama. Okay. Or something like that. That was never going to be the case. Or the Washington Huskies offense coordinator decides to jump ship from Washington and get off that coaching staff to go to, it just wasn't going to happen, guys. It just was not going to happen. So where does this leave Iowa? Well, to tell you the truth, guys, Iowa is in about as good of a place as they can be. They just got a commitment from five-star offensive tackle and Caden Proctor, who was the starting left tackle for one of the most talented rosters in all of college football and played in the college football playoff. They have nearly the entire offensive line as a whole returning, including a 6-year player in Nick DeYoung. This will be the most talented offensive line Iowa has had in several years. Easily. Yes, Iowa lost Deontay Vines, but guys, look at where he landed. He landed at Old Dominion. Okay. I think that does say a lot about what Iowa was working with at the wide receiver position this year. I'm not saying that Deontay Vines didn't get interest from other schools, but the fact that Deontay Vines did not go from Iowa to Purdue like Tyrone Tracy did, or Iowa to another Power 5 school, I think says a lot. And I do wish Deontay Vines the best. But Iowa has pretty much their entire wide receiver core. Caleb Brown. They have some tall athletic wide receivers coming up the ranks. Jarriett Bowie, Dayton Howard, Jacob Bostic. They have Seth Anderson. They have 2 potential NFL tight ends on the roster in Addison Ostrenga and Luke Lachey, aka Luke Lackey, coming back. And the most important piece, the 2 most important pieces, the entire quarterback room is coming back. And I'm very interested to see what Tim Lester can get out of Cade McNamara in year 1. I cannot wait to see what he is able to get out of Cade McNamara in year 1. Can we see him get the most that we have ever seen out of Cade McNamara in his final year as an Iowa Hawkeye? He has a full quarterback room. Are they the most talented? Is it the most talented quarterback room in all of college football? No, it's not. But it's still talented. The cupboard is full. They have 3 quarterbacks with Division I football experience and 2 quarterbacks with Big Ten Power 5 level experience on the roster. With James Razor coming in, and he's going to be a nice initial quarterback for Tim Lester to develop. But the most important, well, depending on who, I think it's the most important, because while the quarterback play is definitely important at Iowa, as is the case for every team, Iowa has shown that it can win regardless of who is at quarterback. Okay. Now, it's still important. I mean, CJ Beathard, Ricky Stanzi, Drew Tate, Brad Banks are all, if you look at how good they were as quarterbacks and you look at Iowa's success, obviously it matters. Okay. Even Nate Stanley, Iowa had a fair amount of success with him. Obviously, it matters if your quarterback is good, but I'm just saying that at a school like Iowa, it's not necessarily the end all be all. The Iowa running back room is completely full with multiple players with multiple years of experience. I said this last year, if LaShawn Williams and all the running backs in the running back room decided to stay and didn't transfer out, that this would be the most talented, full running back room that Iowa has had in years. They have Caleb Johnson, LaShawn Williams, Josiah Patterson, Kamari Moulton, and Terrell Washington Jr. And they have 2 freshman running backs coming up the pipeline as well in the 2024 class. LaShawn Williams and Caleb Johnson are both near 1,000-yard rushers. Let's just take a look so you guys can see what I'm talking about, and I can give you guys a visual of what I'm talking about and why you guys should be excited, and I'm excited as well, okay? So what I'm saying, guys, is that I believe, and this was one of the positives, or one of why I said was one of the selling points that Iowa should have installed and put forth towards coaching candidates, is the fact that if you come into Iowa, it's not like you have to totally revamp the offensive roster. Are there some subtle changes that need to be made? Yes. But it is my belief, and I guarantee the coaches feel the same, there is still talent in that room. And Iowa, and I think a lot of media analysts, writers, regional writers, Iowa writers feel the same. Iowa didn't have bad, they weren't so poor offensively because of the lack of talent in the room. It was mostly because of the poor scheme. They had talent in that room. Was it the best? No. But was it so bad to where Iowa was last in all of college football in almost every major offensive statistical category? No. So look at this, guys. LaShawn Williams almost had 1,000 yards, 821 yards. Caleb Johnson, did he take a step back? Yes, but he was also injured. So his number one concern needs to be getting healthy. All of these running backs return as long as they decide not to transfer. Kamari Moulton, Josiah Patterson, Caleb Johnson, LaShawn Williams. Terrell Washington Jr. returns as well. So to wrap this up, guys, including three of the top 6. Well, let's just see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 7 guys on in receiving returning. So my final sentiment is this is about as good of a hire as they could have hoped for. I think he checks a lot of boxes. Are there some negatives on his resume? Yes, that 19 point whatever offensive points per game offensive output was not great. Okay. But with that said, there's a lot of good, and I already covered all of the good. No need to repeat them. He will be able to immediately come in year one and have all the pieces necessary to turn this Iowa offense around immediately. And my expectation as somebody who is I don't consider myself a part of the Iowa media, but I am an Iowa contributor. My expectation is that he does turn this Iowa offense around immediately. I don't see any reason why he cannot immediately get Iowa into the top 60 in major offensive categories right away. All the pieces are there. Potential high NFL round tight end in Luke Lachey, check. And you have a nice backup in Addison Ostrenga, who had multiple games of experience last year due to injuries from other tight ends. You have your wide receivers. You have an explosive wide receiver 1 in Caleb Brown that you can use as a jack of all trades and really get creative with using him. You have a full running back room with elusive and bruiser type running backs. And you have a quarterback that you can finally get the most out of in Cade McNamara. So my expectations already are high. I'm not saying that he needs to immediately take Iowa into the top 50 of every major statistical category, but he can immediately change it, improve it from last in the bottom 100 to top 75, top 60. That's kind of the range I'm looking for, from 60 to 75 in the major statistical categories. Year one, he should immediately have this offense averaging at least 25 points a game. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. Let me know what you guys think about this hire. Do you like it? Are your expectations high for year one? Is there any reason why we should not have pretty high expectations for this guy right out the gate? Is the talent already there? Are the weapons already there? What do you guys think? Like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. And last but not least, DBAP. Don't be a pussy willow. Facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.